Good evening and welcome to StarCast from Planet Waves. I'm Eric Francis Compolino, your friendly neighborhood astrologer and the author of the Planet Waves horoscope and host of Planet Waves FM on Pacifica Radio. Thank you for joining me. Today's is the regularly scheduled edition for the 24th of October, 2024. That would be 10/24/24, I guess. And this edition accompanies the November monthly horoscope, which is attached below or over on the planetwaves.eu website. That is subscriber content. Just one in-house housekeeping note. The comp subscriptions that went out about 2 months ago are starting to expire, and if you appreciated your trial run of the Planet Waves subscription edition, please consider signing up. For those who have financial hardship, write to us directly. We have a way to work around that, including a sliding scale option. And in addition, a large number of people who were paying subscribers were inadvertently comped for 2 months. A number of you have made voluntary donations to Planet Waves. Thank you very much for doing that. Your billing should resume at some point soon. And thank you for being part of the long, slow build-up to a subscriber base on Substack. For those who are listening elsewhere, off campus, far-flung, on places like BitChute or whatever, Podbean or things like this, this is a production of Planet Waves Astrology. The homepage of this project is planetwaves.net, and our Substack is planetwaves.eu. Those basically are mirrored content for the most part. Okay, so here we are with the sun in Scorpio. Me being somebody with a lot of water signs, and a grand water trine and a grand earth trine, in case you're wondering what makes me what I am. I appreciate it when the sun is in a water sign. I think the world needs more water. We are made of water. We drink water. We kind of inhale and exhale water. And unless you're in some kind of a flood zone or in the path of a hurricane, water is almost always a helpful thing. And in any event, the sun is in Scorpio, the fixed water sign, a strange combination of factors. The symbol for Scorpio is a creature that seems to have evolved out of the sea, a scorpion. Unless lobsters evolved on land, but and crawled into the sea, I have a feeling that life emerged from the sea. All life emerged from the sea. And so with fixed water, we get such concepts as permafrost, the glaciers that aren't really supposed to melt. And one of my favorites is fossilized seawater, of which there is lots in places like Michigan, whole seas that were basically kind of encased in the land, and then there's this ancient seawater that can be pumped out of the ground, and in the past and perhaps in the present was mined for things like bromine and chlorine and other halogens. Anyway, here is the sun in Scorpio, and there's not really a heck of a lot else in the water signs right now. Well, not unless you count like Neptune in Pisces. See, this is the thing with Neptune. It always disappears. So Neptune on the edge of Pisces, and Nessus in Pisces, and Saturn in Pisces, and a slow, powerful Mars in Cancer. The reason I say slow and powerful is that Mars is working its way up to a retrograde in very early Leo. That commences on December 4th. And so Mars is really only going to cover about 11 degrees between now and early December. So that's about more than 6 weeks to cover that few degrees. And so one of the measures of influence in astrology is how slowly something moves. And so here we have Mars slowing down maybe to the rate of Jupiter, and then it'll slow down to the daily motion of Saturn, and then we'll slow down to the daily motion of Pluto, and then it'll just be sitting there, seeming to go nowhere, and station retrograde, which will encompass the rest of December, January, and I think part of February. I don't have that data in front of me when it goes retrograde, when it goes direct, but it'll be early in 2025. And because I have been spending basically the last month working on the 2025 readings, including an ebook, the Awa, which is ready. That's short for the Awakening. Just kind of a cute abbreviation of that, which I like, but it also means something in Japanese that I really like. It is. I am a little daunted by this astrology. It took me most of this week and maybe part of last week to write the first of the 12 readings. And I started with Aries, as I usually do. And I began by saying, how do you interpret a chart where there is a conjunction in Aries that is plainly unprecedented? We don't need to go to the New York Times editorial board. They have a special editorial committee at the New York Times to determine whether the word unprecedented can be used in an article. Can you believe that? They just have a copy editor. They have a committee. And you can use the word unprecedented for a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the first degree of Aries. Such has never happened. Kirsty Melto searched all the way back to 1 BC using two very good astrology programs. And so we are heading for some very unusual stuff. The conjunction of Chiron and Eris as well that is currently forming. In fact, yesterday Mars made its square. I guess I don't know when Mars. I'm not opening up my laptop to redo the astrology, but Mars on the way to being retrograde in Leo made a square to Eris. It previously, about a week, maybe a little more ago, made a square to Chiron. So we've got Mars stirring the pot on this Chiron-Eris conjunction that is in formation. It would be nice if there were more information, but the conjunction is currently developing. And I think when we see what this thing ends up being about in the spring of 2025, we will be able to look back and observe that we were living with the effects and the influences of this aspect right now. Part of it is the edgy feeling that we are experiencing. It is this sense of the other shoe about to drop, which I think has been a permanent part of the psychic features of our culture back to 9/11. That pretty much blindsided everyone except for the people who were involved in the planning of it. Although a few people said, "Oh, well, this can happen," or it might happen, or they wrote a report that called for it to happen. But we're still talking about very few people compared to the number who were impacted and affected and who still are. And I think we've been living with this feeling since that time of the other shoe about to drop. What is going to happen next? And the whole COVID operation was a very big part of that. By the way, while I'm on the topic of the COVID operation, tomorrow I'll be releasing an conversation with my fellow investigative reporter, Michael Bryant, who has about as many publishing credits on the COVID operation as I do, and we talk about the planning events in late 2019, both in October 2019. So check for that in your inbox tomorrow. I'll be sending that out by way of all lists. All right, so Mars just passed through this Uranus Chiron-Eris conjunction, and I thought it was a little bit of a rough week as that was happening emotionally. I was finding it very difficult to get grounded, and feeling a little bit despondent and like, why am I doing all of this? But I feel better today, and Mars now is moving on nice and slowly into a sextile 60-degree aspect with Uranus. Mars right now at 25 and change, Uranus at 26 and change. So that will be in effect all evening, overnight into tomorrow, and at some point soon after that begin separating. Also, we have, let's see, looking over at the Pisces side of the ice rink, Neptune is retrograde, Nessus is retrograde, and Saturn is retrograde. In the next regular edition next week, I'll talk about these factors stationing direct, which seems to be fairly soon because the sun is trine them, and that is when you know that they're about to station direct. Also, Pluto is now in direct motion as of October 11th, I believe. I checked that last week. And so Pluto has just grazed the very last degree of Capricorn, that lovely conspiratorial degree of men, the secret committee of men who rule the world, making big decisions. It is the perfect degree for Pluto to be in during a presidential election. And never has an election seemed to be more of a kind of a boxing match between hedge funds. This is not really Trump versus Harris. This not really the Democrats versus the Republicans. This is BlackRock versus Blackstone. Yes, we are in the middle of a boxing match between the hedge funds, or as Tolkien wrote somewhere in the Lord of the Rings, the gods are throwing boulders at one another. Let's see. Mercury, then we'll wrap up with a little bit of Venus, and then maybe a little bit of an update on the Hunger Games aspect in Capricorn. All right, so Mercury moving through Scorpio now at about probably at its highest average daily speed. Not long ago, it completed its conjunction to the sun, heading for a retrograde earlier in the year, but we've still got a bunch of time, at least a good bit of time before the shadow phase that begins. Mercury, by the way, is in the degrees of Scorpio, or all of Scorpio, where a great many 1960s births were. This is an aspect of 1960s births I don't talk about enough, and I think that we couldn't ever say too much about 1960s astrology. We talk a lot about the baby boom and a lot about millennials, and I'm going to promise right now to come back with a special edition of StarCast on 1960s astrology. I do have a series on this called Born in the 60s from way back at the beginning of my career. But anyway, Mercury's moving through this territory where Neptune in Scorpio is. Neptune in Scorpio, this is, I don't have the exact dates on this, but it's Neptune is in the middle of Scorpio around 1964. So probably came in the late 1950s, probably goes out around 1971 or 72 or so. So that's an important feature of peak 1960s astrology, and it's a big component of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll component of the 1960s. And like Meatloaf in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, a great many of us born in the 60s are wondering, whatever happened to Saturday night? Okay, Venus is now in Sagittarius, heading for a conjunction to the Great Attractor. That's a deep space point. Then a conjunction to Pallas Athene, and then the galactic center, another deep space point. Venus in Sag has that goddessy feel to it. And I'm going to propose something right now that I would ask your indulgence upon and perhaps commentary. I think we need to put an end and a stop, as abrupt as possible, to the linguistic tick of referring to female humans as goddesses. I'm starting to actually take offense to this, and I'm not an easy person to offend. But the reason I'm taking offense is I think this is actually toxic, and I think that it is dangerous, and I think that it is dehumanizing in one direction of women, where women complain that they're being dehumanized in other directions, and then at the same time, I think of the propensity in modern times to refer to women as goddesses is another form of dehumanization. So there's one definition of women, that they are allegedly said to be subhuman. I do not know any men at all ever who have ever considered this meekly, but that's what we're told. And then in the other direction, women are cast as goddesses. And I think that this whole business of counting women, or perhaps women's movement leaders counting women as something other than just simply human, ought to stop. And one place I'd like to see that stop is to remove, it's like a style book edit, where you say, okay, we don't say that. There's a funny one that all publications have funny style book references. Like you have to go to a committee at the New York Times to use the word unprecedented in an article. I would just use another word if I were a writer for the New York Times, because it's a stupid word anyway. But in this case, this would be a style book edit. And I think that this is necessary because we need to be appreciating the humility of the human situation and doing anything in our poor power or our considerable power to hold one another as equals, at least as equals in potential and deserving of honesty, respect, and dignity, rather than pulling rank. And I think that the term goddess pulls rank in a completely inappropriate way. I mean, could you imagine a man being casually referred to as a god? I mean, the idea is completely ridiculous. It would be laughable. In fact, I could see men among themselves joking about it rather than taking it seriously and solemnly. Oh, Bill, he's a god of programming. And even then I'd be like, yeah, right. I'm just good at it. See you later. All right. So Venus, meanwhile, is going to be rather active in the sky. And by that, I mean it is approaching these deep space points that adorn mid-Sagittarius. Great attractor at 14 and change. Galactic center at 21 and change. Nope, 27 and change. It looks like a 1. It's really a 7. And so it just so happens that in the direction where Venus is, and I guess Venus will be visible in the morning sky. Well, no. Venus is the evening star right now. I confused my left and my right. In the astrology chart, the evening star is Venus as the goddess of love. Let's let Venus do all the goddessing around here. And setting in the evening, she is saying, make love, not war. All right, moving right along a bit in, let's skip the Hunger Games thing. I think I've done that every week since June. But now I'm going to switch to a topic, and we've got a few minutes left, that is going to bring in the Hunger Games thing, because I've cast a special list for activity in the early cardinal signs. Cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. They are the signs that begin the seasons here in the Northern Hemisphere. Aries begins the spring, Cancer begins the summer, etc., etc. Reverse it for this Southern Hemisphere. And this is always a zone of the zodiac that I keep a close eye on. I'm always interested in what's going on near the Aries point and then extending a bit from the Aries point. So, in conclusion of today's Starcast, here is a brief report on the Aries point. First of all, one of the objects close to the Aries point is, hold on a second here. What is the earliest thing? All right. The reason I didn't use this is a centaur that I don't really understand. Maybe you do understand it. It's called Thereus, Thereus. Any centaur freaks who I was good friends with in 2002 out there listening? Thereus is conjunct the Virgo cluster. Tracy changed the name. That's actually M87, but for some reason, Tracy changed the name to the Virgo cluster. I still think of it as M87, which is the gravitational center of our local group of galaxies. That's a lot of emphasis. Followed by Nemesis at 2 Libra and change. That's really 3 Libra. Manwë at 2 and change of Aries. That is really interesting. Manwë is the king of the gods in The Lord of the Rings. He is not Eru Ilúvatar, the One, but Manwë is of the local gods who decided they were going to stick around on the planet Earth and do their best to keep things in order. Manwë is their leader. He is conjunct Aphrodite, or rather, Aphrodite is conjunct him. This is the Greek version of Venus. Now, these two things are square a conjunction that I'm probably going to lead the Cancer reading with, which is the conjunction of chaos. That is a far distant point. It's 40 astronomical units away. That's like really pretty far. That's like almost as far as Pluto, 40 astronomical units away. And chaos is the Greek god of prime creation. It's chaos and Gaia. Chaos being the male polarity of that, Gaia being the earth. And so it's kind of an earth-sky pairing with chaos representing the sky and or the firmament. I don't talk about this very much. I put it in almost every chart. I've always got one eye on it. There's just so much to talk about, but that's why I'm doing this little special section today. Now, this is conjunct Asbolus. Asbolus is the 4th or 5th ever discovered centaur. And I love Asbolus because it points to themes of survival, of wanting to live. It means the name Asbolus, the word Asbolus means carbon dust. And so when I first got wind of that and looking at the ephemeris for Asbolus and putting it places and looking at it, I thought, carbon dust, that's interesting. What is this thing going to be about? And so I think of Asbolus as being the thing that all life has in common, which is the desire to keep living. And so we're getting this dose of Asbolus chaos, this cosmic inspiration to keep living, to keep at it, despite how challenging it is, how difficult and discouraging it is. These are 90 degrees to Aphrodite. That's interesting. Where's the love? Bring in the love. And this all is in aspect to Ixion, the squanderer of second chances. How about that? Ixion, very important concept. That's a big part, in my view, of the Hunger Games cluster in Capricorn. And in the mix, one last point, that is Apollo, making the same mistakes over and over again. By the way, last night I issued my reading of Donald Trump's chart. You can find that on either of my Substacks at planetwaves.org or planetwaves.eu. That's a post that is free to all people. And the reason I mention that is because Trump has the asteroid Apollo rising. He is 30 degrees Leo rising and tucked right into that little micro split of the sign Leo is Apollo. And Trump likes to make the same mistakes over and over again. And so do the people who believe in him. With that, I will leave you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a subscriber, a customer, and a supporter of Planet Waves. Signing off from Kingston, New York at 2:50 p.m. on 10/24/24. Lots of love, and bye for now.